I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual. 起立，面向佛堂，参加先鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，参加各位的传世一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。
Thanks, Derek, and welcome everybody to the June the 11th installment of our online study group. It's a joy to see all of you with us this morning, and as usual, good morning or afternoon or evening, whatever is appropriate for wherever you happen to be listening in on us today. I'm in scenic Indianapolis, Indiana, where it's currently 1:30 in the afternoon. It's a beautiful, breezy, sunny summer day here. It's going to be up around 92, 93 degrees outside today, nice and warm and sunny. And I've spent a good portion of the morning out there just enjoying the weather and the sunshine and watching the robins that have built a nest in our tree out front. And just having a great morning. It's just beautiful to see. Today I want to talk to you just a bit about the mystic female. and no, it's not about my wife or my daughters or anybody else's wife for that matter. This is about chapter 6 of the Dao De Jing, probably absolutely one of the shortest chapters in the Dao De Jing. And here in the West, one of the most difficult to understand, perhaps, because, well, it appears to be cryptic and short and scarce on words. And whenever Lao Tzu writes something in that particular fashion, it belies a tremendous amount of power and wisdom underneath those few words. This chapter is no exception to that. What it says, for those of you who don't happen to be looking at it right at the moment, is this. It says, the valley spirit, undying, is called the mystic female. The gate of the mystic female is called the root of heaven and earth. It flows continuously, barely perceptible. Utilize it, it is never exhausted. If ever there were in English a chapter of the Dao De Jing that is perhaps more difficult to unravel than most others, this is one of them. I need to take just a moment, because of what this chapter is really discussing, to talk about a couple of other concepts that are difficult to grasp in the West. And as Derek and I were talking about just a few moments ago, this is going to pertain not only to the spiritual path, but to the martial path and the life path, the journey of one's life as well. It starts with the question, what is Tai Chi? Tai Chi is what most Americans recognize as being the practice of the slow, controlled movements that we see on my favorite commercial is the Walt Disney Cruise Line commercial on the deck of the cruise ship where you see 6 or 8 or 10 geriatric folks out there, performing what is supposed to be one of the Taiji forms. But the truth of the matter is there is no Tai Chi. Tai Chi, T-A-I-C-H-I, is a misspelling of a single Chinese word, Taiji, T-A-I-J-I, which means, in this context, the supreme or ultimate or maximum extent of. It's a superlative description. There is one other relevant set of characters that are spelled Taiji in English, and that is the character for motion or movement. And I will explain why this is relevant here in just a little bit. The other term that is not well understood although it's becoming somewhat more popular thanks to schools like mine and movies and all sorts of other fun stuff, is Qigong. What it means is energy work. No more, no less, just energy work. Okay? However, here in the States, you hear very frequently of references that pertain to the movement of the blood or the breath or breathing. It's been likened to an electrical flow and misinterpreted in a variety of ways that occur around those various contexts. And unless the person doing the speaking actually understands it, those are inaccurate, guarantee you. What it means is energy work, plain and simple, okay? The chi, the energy being spoken of in this particular case is one of the three essential energies, chi, the energy of the universe. You can, for all intents and purposes, consider that energy to be limitless, to be inexhaustible, which finally brings us back around to the chapter of the Dao De Jing we're about to discuss. Along with the qi, there are the shin and the jing. The shin is the energy of the mind intent, the energy of the will. Okay, and the jing is the life force, the energy with which you are born. But we're not going to touch on those too terribly much this morning. So, why bring that up? Well, simply because, there we go. I was going to do this in the other order, but we'll take the latter slide first. There are a few things that Chapter 6 is not all about, okay? In reality, Chapter 6 is not about females, anyone in particular or all of them as a group. It's not about sex or reproduction. The gate of the mystic female has nothing to do with a woman's anatomy, okay, per se. It is alliterative. It's illustrative. And so to try and personalize that or pictify it or objectify it instantaneously misinterprets it. It is not about the classic gender contest, men versus women and vice versa. That's not what it's about. It is not about gender roles, and it is not about being cryptic and enigmatic. That was not Lao Tzu's thing, okay? And there is nothing in the teachings of Lao Tzu that cannot be clarified and understood with a bit of good information. What there is a 2,500 year span of time and a vast difference in the particular cultures that are experiencing the Dao De Jing. Lao Tzu came from ancient China about 2,500 years ago. We're in 21st century America, and those two cultures could not be more different in terms of their worldview and their approach to the cosmos and to living. Now, does that make one better or worse than the other? No, and I'm not here to comment on that. They simply are different. However, that span of time and culture can be bridged with some research, some study, and a little good information. One of the reasons Derek and I do what we do here every Sunday is to provide some of that good information. I am a lifelong practitioner of martial sciences. I started out Korean, migrated into Okinawan karate, and from there wandered into Chinese Taiji Chuan. Taiji Chuan originated, depending upon who you ask, between 3,500 and 5,000 years ago at the Wudang Mountain Temple, originally divined by a little monk named Zhansong Feng. Okay, whether or not the time periods are completely precise, whether or not Zhansong Feng ever existed, I choose to view as completely irrelevant. What's relevant to me is or are the principles and teachings and wisdom that underlie the practices. And because I practice them and I know how they work and I understand how effective they are, I don't question the source. For those of you who do not know, questioning the source is appropriate, but not in a half an hour time frame. And so that'll have to be a discussion for another time. So that's what Chapter 6 is not about. What is it about? Well, it references the mystic female because what we're talking about are feminine attributes. We're talking about the attributes of longevity and endurance and persistence. We're talking about stillness and returning to the Tao. In short, we're talking about yin energy, Lao Tzu's favorite energetic component. The yin principle is mentioned repeatedly throughout the Dao De Jing because it is the principle that results in a long, happy, joyous, relatively smooth, and simple life. Okay? The attributes of the yin side of the yin and yang, if you will, are those of receptivity, stillness, darkness, softness, yielding and bending, a certain amount of flexibility, if you will. It is the non-confrontational, non-contentious side of the energies. And those things, if you'll marinate in that for just a moment, you'll realize are intrinsically the things that we see as being feminine. Whereas when we look at the yang side, we tend to think of things that are more assertive, more active in movement and motion, the things that are perhaps somewhat more rigid, less yielding, less flexible. Okay? And Lao Tzu has a lot to say about the way that those two energies affect us in life. Now, there is a balance between yin and yang, and there is no completely pure yin or yang as far as we know in this existence. If you study the symbol, on the light side you see a little dark dot, typically white and black. On the other side, in the dark side, you see a little dot of white. Okay? That's indicative of that lack of purity, which is not a bad thing. In all yin, there is a little yang. In all yang, some yin. Okay? So we're not talking about polar opposition. We're not talking about diametrically opposed opposites. What we're talking about is really a complementary pair where one side nurtures and supports the other in a continual cyclical flow. Now that's important to us because in reading through Chapter 6, pardon, we are talking about predominantly the yin side of that balance, but that doesn't negate the existence of the other. However, if one wishes to lead a long, happy, joyous, Tao-centric life, a close adherence to the yin principle is important. That is, taking on the attributes of softness, of yielding, of flexibility, of non-contention, of being more receptive than assertive, of not wanting to participate in conflict or confrontation, of wanting to nurture and assist everything that comes along. Okay, translate that into a healthy respect and veneration for all life. and a desire to compassionately strive for the benefit of all those around us. Okay? Receptivity and at least being willing to listen to the viewpoint of another, even if we don't agree, without the need to argue or be right about our particular viewpoint. Those things represent the yin side of the equation. It doesn't mean that there's never a time to be assertive, but it does mean that there's always a time to be respectful and compassionate. Okay? The yin side of the equation flows quietly, very still, almost silently throughout our lives. If we don't look for it, it's very easy to miss, very easy to dismiss as being devoid of power. But there is no power greater than the yin principle. No power in the universe has the power to end conflict so quickly as receptivity and acceptance. When one refuses to participate in a conflict, there's no conflict to be had. It removes danger. It ends confrontation. It smooths over the problems in human relationships. It provides peace and tranquility to the individual and allows us to sit and enjoy a quiet summer's breeze with a little robin in the tree, no matter what else is going on around us. And it is truly limitless. Like the Tao itself, there is no end to this energy. It is remarkable in its function and remarkable in its lack of intrusiveness and invasiveness. This is the mystic female. And it's important. Lao Tzu says to utilize it, that it is never exhausted. And that's the truth. Yin and Yang flow continuously and forever. Okay? In the human body, the microcosm of the universe, we say that Taiji, motion, movement, the practice of the form, if you will, separates the Qi into the Yin and Yang, the two components of the essential energy. It's stillness, quietness, meditation, the Qigong work reunifies Yin and Yang into Qi. I'm not going to get into all the physiological processes that occur there. I don't have that much time. But understand that every person, whether they're aware of it or not, participates in those cycles of energetic movement. And without them, the bodies wouldn't work. Okay? Therefore, it becomes important. So how do we apply this? How do we make all of this philosophizing work in our lives? Funny, I have a slide about that. First of all, understand that embracing yin is a common theme in the Dao De Jing. Lao Tzu speaks about that very frequently in a variety of different contexts. And if we're not reading them fairly frequently, we should be. So please avail yourself of the Dao De Jing annotated and explained while I put in a shameless plug for Derek's book, one of them, and read those chapters. But no one understands that understanding yang but embracing yin is the path to that long and joyous and happy and wonderful life. Both energies are required. Both are absolutely necessary. But it is the yin energy that nurtures all that it touches, that makes everything grow. It is the water to the flowers, the miracle grow to our vegetables. It is the fertilizer for our souls, if you will. It is what allows us to give our children the nurturing they need to be confident and to succeed instead of simply just landing all over them for being children. Okay? It is what makes mom, mom. When I look at my wonderful wife, and she is absolutely wonderful. She is all about the mystic yin principle. And to this day, even though my children are older now, between 14 and 33, when they feel scared or hurt or insecure, they go and look for mom. I'm the guy that will try to fix whatever's going on. But mom's the one who will sit there and listen. It's interesting to watch. Always remember that the yin principle is the principle of life itself. It is the principle of longevity. Okay? This ought to be an easy one to understand. The more involved we are in the stress, strain, and competition of our modern world to get from point A to point B, to climb the corporate ladder, to be the first guy to the finish line, to collect the most toys, whatever. We break down our bodies and our minds. Okay? All of that stress and strain and life view of conflict and combat, that every life situation is a battle to be won and a situation to be conquered, has its price, and that price we pay in terms of our health and our sanity. Lao Tzu says, things grow old and then perish. Okay? We get strong, we get rigid, we get inflexible, we get old, and we die. The yin principle is the cure, if you will, for that situation. It isn't going to keep our bodies functioning forever, but it'll keep it functioning a lot longer than it would otherwise. The mystic female, that yin path, the yin energy, is the path to peacefulness and a Tao-focused life. It is impossible to embrace the Tao teachings while we're out trying to wrestle every situation to the ground. It cannot be done. We have to stand still long enough to grasp and understand the teachings in order to apply them. And when we do that, then adhering to that yin principle has the wonderful and transformative effect of changing a human life. And all of a sudden, our endeavors work a lot better, even though it seems to us that they don't require anywhere near the effort. And one other illustration of that principle, and I have a school full of students who will attest to this. When I do demonstrations, I move just a couple of inches with no effort at all. And yet I'm able to toss them around like rag dolls anytime I want. When I was learning to do that to them, Master Wong did the same thing to me. I spent more than a couple of fun-filled minutes hauling myself out of his swimming pool, which is where I tended to land when he did the very same thing. And then I wondered how it was he was able to do that and make it look so doggone easy. Well, now I understand. And it is by applying the yin principle. Okay? That's also a whole nother discussion. The yin principle is barely noticeable, but it is extremely powerful. It's like the currents that flow at the bottom of a deep river or a drop-off on a beach or a coastline. You don't see the ripples at the surface, but if you step into them, they'll suck you under in a second, and getting away from them can be very difficult. There is tremendous power sometimes in what we cannot perceive. And the Yin principle is one of those things. It is not until we seek that awareness that we can see and feel the benefits of the Yin principle. Knowing it's there is not sufficient. But once you understand that it's there and you begin to look for it, then its real effect can be felt. There are a number of other things contained within this chapter, and wow, if I had 2 or 3 hours or a day or two, we could go into depth about all of them, and going forward we probably will. But there are a couple of takeaways here that are useful, even if we can't explain all of it at once. First of all things return to their root one day. Always. That's not just a good idea. It's kind of like gravity. It's a universal law. The gate of the mystic female is called the root of heaven and earth. It is the point of origination for all things. It is the stopping off point between us and the Tao of heaven, if you will. Okay? And make no mistake, we all one day will return our bodies to the earth, and whatever it is we possess that transcends the death event to whatever it is that we perceive heaven as being. I prefer to think of that as the Tao, a pure energetic state, but I'm not even going to presume to try and tell you guys how to perceive that. I only know there what I believe, and I certainly can't demonstrate that or anything different. Second of all, by embracing Yin, we bring ourselves closer to that gate of heaven and earth, closer to the Tao itself. The closer we get to fully embracing and utilizing the Yin principle, the more into alignment with the Tao itself we become. That's been a sometimes difficult lesson for me, and I'm not going to pretend that I've mastered all of that. I have not. I am nobody's guru and nobody's master in that regard. But I've done enough of it that I absolutely know that it works. And I can't wait to see what happens as I continue that practice. I can only hope that the rest of my life's been as cool following the Tao teachings as the last 10 or 15 years have been. It is a wonderful, wonderful path. The last thing I want to tell you is that you should use your wisdom and understanding. Okay, use a discerning eye and your critical thinking. Okay, and a lot of practice to hold on to that Yin principle, because this is a somewhat ethereal and not real well understood topic in the West. It is very easy to fall victim to disinformation, misinformation, and well-meaning ignorance. And in some cases, there are those who would use that lack of understanding to push a personal agenda or take advantage of those, who may not know better. And so be careful about what it is you believe, what it is you accept. Use a discerning eye and be relatively cautious. If your intuition tells you something can't possibly be quite right, it's probably worth a second look. So you, by all means, don't just jump. But when you find the good information, when you find the right answers, embrace them with all of your heart and put them to work in your life. I can only hope that what I've said here today, will help someone absorb some of that information or go on down the path and add to that information so that what you come up with is the answers that you're looking for. Thanks awful much for letting me share with you, and I sure hope something I said was useful for someone today. Thank you.
Bill, thank you. Bill, observing your life, what I see seems to be a pattern of starting out with yang manifestation and moving towards yin. What I mean by that is that I remember you telling me your story about how you encountered your master and later on became a fighter. You and I were talking about that for just a little bit before the meeting started. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, when you began, your focus was on much more of the external power types of martial arts. You seem to have transitioned to Qigong and Taiji, much more internal oriented. Is that a correct observation?
Yes, it's absolutely correct. And you also know when I started, my mental perspective was vengeance. And
right.
Now that perspective is one of spiritual unity with the Tao. It's been by following these practices that I've been able to put those old ways behind me and find a much softer way of being.
So what is true for you in your own practice of Kung Fu is also true to your mental landscape. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
And, I like to apply the Tao to everything because, I believe that everything is reflective of one another. So what I think about when I hear you say that is I think about how a lot of guys start out being full of themselves, when we're young, and quite arrogant, disdainful, disrespectful, thinking, guys, let's all admit it, collectively as a group, when we're younger, when we're teenagers, we think we're all that in a bag of chips. And later on, so that's yang energy talking, I believe. And it seems that we all go through a transition, Bill. I'm not sure if you would agree, but when guys mature and get married, we realize that the true power of the universe is the yin energy.
Bet on it.
So hopefully we become more humble and more respectful, less aggressive, less arrogant, hopefully. And, to reflect on this yet another way, at the time that Lao Tzu wrote the Dao De Jing, he lived in a time of endless warfare, strife, and chaos, much like some parts of the world still lives today. So that was definitely way too much yang energy. He was probably sick and tired of it. And in some ways, our world really hasn't changed all that much. And, so I think it's entirely understandable that he would want all of humanity to focus more on the yin side of the equation. What do you think?
I think that's very much true. And I'm going to tell you, when people do that, at least what I've found in my own practice, and I think you'll agree this is the truth, is that in the practice of Taiji, I found power that no other martial science can even come close to approaching. But the desire to use it is gone.
So no more flaunting, power displays, hogging the spotlights, everybody look at me, that type of thinking.
That really wasn't the way I approached it even way back when. I quite frankly was tired of getting beaten up all the time.
Yeah, that's
but it's a change It's a change in perspective from being willing to fight to being unwilling to fight.
Gotcha. So,
I mean, there have been times in the last 10 years where you've heard me say in this forum that if somebody broke into my house, I wouldn't have any compunctions about killing them. That's been, 10 years ago. But I've learned since then that there's just never a reason to have to do that.
Right.
And I don't say that anymore.
Exactly. I've noticed the change in you as part of your overall evolution as an individual. So back to the Dao De Jing, I sometimes will comment that the Dao De Jing is like the original classic on feminism because it's it's talking about the mystic female. It does not talk about the mystic male. There's no mention anywhere in that entire book about that. So
we're not that mysterious.
So people might say, well, where's the balance? Gotta give equal representation, female here, male here, to that, I would say, well, the world in which we live is, we want human beings in the illusion of the material world. We will sometimes insist on balance, equality, where none exists. So the yin energy, the mystic female, is identified as the source of life because, of course, women give birth. Where's the balance there? Is it like, well, even number of months, guys will get pregnant, odd number of months, women will get pregnant, and therefore we divide up the work of childbirth equally. That doesn't happen. That's not the reality in which we live. So, it's all about the, you're right, there's a lot of emphasis about the yin energy. There's no emphasis on the yang energy throughout the entire book of the Dao De Jing.
It's okay. I've watched my wife give birth on multiple occasions, and knowing to what I've seen, I don't want to be pregnant.
Right. And by the way, this talk, The Mystic Female, is especially timely because of current events. I am, of course, referring to the movie Wonder Woman.
hadn't even thought of that, but.
And that's doing well in the box office. Whenever you have a combination or a fusion of yin and yang energies, you create something that has the potential to do really well all over the world, any culture, all different in the world, including just tremendous popularity for this movie. And if you think about it, it's the fusion, it's the combination of grace and beauty with strength and power. So there you go. That's the yin and yang symbol right there.
Yes, indeed it is.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架三鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架规格是一鞠躬，接班一鞠躬。Okay, everybody, we are done.